Perfect. Okay, I think we're going to start. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Lobbying for the Planet. I am Taylor McFarland. I'm the Conservation Program Manager. We also have Dan Friedman and Gabe Silva with us. Dan and Gabe, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Gabe.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Gabriel. I'm a senior field organizer with the Field Organizing Capacity Team with the National Sierra Club. And I've been with the Sierra Club I'm going on my third year and happy to be here. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey everyone, Dan Friedman. I use he, him pronouns based in Durham, North Carolina. You've probably heard from me in the past couple of weeks for the other Lobby Day trainings. Good to see folks that I've seen recently. From New Jersey originally, so always happy to work with the New Jersey folks on this call. And I'm with the state lobby team, which I'll talk a little bit about during the presentation. So let's get started with heading to the first slide. Or second slide, I guess. All right, so I think it's important to just take a minute to consider the moment that we're in, to ground ourselves and think about, why it's important to advocate at this time. I think we all know what's going on. We're seeing unprecedented attacks on anything related to the environment from the federal government. And it can really make you feel hopeless. It can make you feel despair and like there's nothing you can do. But with that said, there's a lot that you can do. And you have an opportunity in New Jersey to pass legislation that improves our environment, fights the climate crisis, cleans up sources of pollution. The list goes on. You have a Democratic trifecta. You've got a large Democratic majority in both houses. And so there's an opportunity in your state to really lead on some of these issues. And we've seen even this session and in recent years, bills tackling a range of issues from plastic waste and PFAS pollution to building electrification, clean energy, you name it. Obviously, still have a long way to go. But there is, like I said, a real opportunity in New Jersey. Other folks in red states, purple states, definitely envy the blue states in a sense. And citizen lobbying provides people with the opportunity to advocate for these purposes and to make a difference in your state and in your community. I know we often think of lobbyists as paid professional people working inside the building, but you as a citizen can be a volunteer lobbyist as well and make a big impact. Let's go to the next slide. So a little bit of, if we can zoom out and just think about, the Sierra Club as it comes to state lobbying across the country. We have a pretty robust program. I'm part of what's called the state lobby team, and there's 6 of us on the team. There's 2 directors and 4 regional representatives. Each of us cover a different region. And for me, it's the East, obviously, in North Carolina and working with states all the way up to Maine. And we, in some states, are more deeply involved than others, but we support the work of the lobby programs through creating resources, legislative skills trainings like this one. We can help out with digital tools like text banking, phone banking, action alerts, things like that at key moments in a legislative session. We can also help organize lobby days where we would support a chapter through the process of bringing volunteers into the state house in whatever state we're working in to meet with legislators and lobby them on issues that are priorities. We also help support and build legislative teams for our chapters. We can provide guidance and tools around how to prioritize legislation, how to lobby, how to get a bill from start to finish across the finish line. So there's a lot that we can do. And speaking of legislative teams and committees, each one across all the states that I work with is different. Some are large with 20 or more members. Some are very small with just a few folks. And all of them do different things. Some of them focus on just reading and tracking legislation and passing things on to the staff and making sure that they see the relevant environmental legislation that's coming up in their state. And others go a step further and they actually take action and do things like write op-eds or go and testify in the State House, go and talk with legislators. So they're all a little different and they all have their own value in their own way. One of the primary purposes of a legislative committee or team is to determine the Sierra Club chapter's position or stance on the bills that are coming through the environmental space in your state. And to sometimes also assign a priority. So some bills are going to be high and some are medium and some are low. And that's the work of the legislative team to come up with that. And doing this really provides coherent direction to the chapter staff, or we would say this to the lobbyists. But in our case, New Jersey chapter doesn't have a designated single person who only lobbies and spends all their time doing that. We have Taylor, Angeli, Jackie. They all wear many different hats and do an amazing amount of different things, but they also all do some lobbying as well. So having a legislative committee can provide sort of a backbone to that in some direction. Later on, we'll tell you how to connect with the legislative team in New Jersey if you're interested in being part of that. Let's see, let's go to the next slide. So now I want to talk a little bit about what it means to advocate, basically. What does it mean to be a legislative advocate? What does that entail? It can take on a number of different forms, but if I personally were to boil it down into a couple of key components, it would be building relationships with legislators, decision makers of all forms, and building public support for our issues or our bills. So those two key components. When it comes to interactions with legislators, your relationship with them is what's truly critical. It's really, I can never hammer this point home enough. It's more than the facts that you give them. It's the rapport you're building with them, the sense of trust that you're building. That's what relationships are built on, right? They're built on trust. And so the goal is to become a trusted source of information for the decision maker that you're meeting with. Through repeated interactions with legislators, other decision makers, you can become someone whose opinion they really go to and listen to and trust when they're deciding on how to vote on an issue. Now, so that's the piece of, forming relationships with legislators, sort of inside the inside game, inside the building. The other is the component of building public support outside the building. Or the outside game. And so lobbying is often paired with other things that we do, like sending letters, postcards, we do phone calls, phone banks, we do mass emails from constituents. We have all these cool tools at Sierra Club, and you probably get them from the other organizations you're subscribed to. But these allow us to put outside pressure on key decision makers. We know, of course, that the in-person, in the building lobbying is the most impactful way to sway people, to sway decision makers. But those outside game communications are also critically important, especially when done in large numbers. And what I've seen is that usually the campaigns that have the most success have a combination of the two: a strong inside game with someone or multiple people who are trusted sources for the legislators and have the relationship, and then the outside barrage of pressure coming in from phone calls and rallies and all the things that we can do. And then the last thing I want to say is why do this? Why become an advocate? Why do we advocate? Well, it's really simple. Nothing I'm saying here is not intuitive. When you tell a legislator that you live in their district and you're there to talk to them about an issue, they're going to be typically inclined to hear what you have to say for obvious reasons. One, you're the people they represent. So if they care about their job and they're doing their job right, they actually want to represent you and your interests. Now, we know that's not every legislator, unfortunately, but the other thing is that you get to vote them in. So at the very least, they're going to be concerned about that. And your voice does matter in the State House, especially when you're a constituent. Let's go to the next slide. So that's a little bit about what, the basics of what it entails. Now, how to be effective. Just a few tips on how to be effective from my own experience and others I've worked with. First, I can't emphasize enough the importance of prioritization. We must prioritize the issues and bills that we are going to focus on if we're going to have the kind of effect that we want to have in the State House. It's really tempting to want to engage on every single bill, to go and testify on every single bill, and to have a lobby day for every bill that has something to do with the environment. But to be effective, we really have to focus our efforts on just a few key bills. And in some cases, just having one bill. Have committees in some states that pick one bill and they follow it start to finish and they only focus on that. And it's still a lot of work. It's just a long process to get a bill from start to finish. And so in some cases, one bill is the way to go. But prioritizing in any shape or form is really important. We have tools as a team that can help you prioritize as a legislative committee or as a chapter. There's a worksheet, for example, that walks you through a number of questions and asks you, it basically helps you narrow down the number of bills that you want to focus on. So there are ways to do that. And if it's something you're interested in, we can share that with Taylor and pass that around. So that's one key thing, is prioritizing. The second I would say is when you're speaking to legislators about issues, about legislation, you need to speak with one voice as the New Jersey Sierra Club. It needs to be clear to the legislature what the Sierra Club stance is. We cannot be effective if we do not have one voice. That doesn't mean that we all are saying the same exact thing to the legislator or legislators. Adding individual, concerns or stories, which Gabriel's going to talk about later, is very effective in adding your own personal spin, but it can't conflict with the stance of the chapter. The third thing I would say is if you're lobbying as a Sierra Club volunteer, you must consult with the legislative team or chapter lobbyists, which again, there's 3 in New Jersey. There's no designated lobbyists, but there's 3 staff to ensure you're in line with the chapter stance. Really don't want to be a lone wolf. And again, this ties back to the importance of speaking with one voice as a club. And finally, number 4, to be effective, it's important to understand the process by which a bill becomes a law and where throughout that process we can influence legislators or whoever the decision makers are. So now we're going to talk about just exactly that. Next slide. So how does a bill become a law? Probably all had this in middle school or something, but in New Jersey, and Taylor's going to walk us through a specific example later of a bill that went through the legislature in New Jersey. But just to speak at a general perspective, it starts out with this is kind of the piece that I think people who are new to this don't realize, is that anyone can generate the idea for a bill. It can be even an individual, or it could be an organization like ours. It could be the legislator themselves. But we, as members of the public, as residents of the state, can generate the concept for a bill and work with the legislator to get a bill introduced. That legislator will then author a draft of the bill. A first draft is usually not the way that it's going to get passed, but they will start the process that way. And then they will sometimes seek other legislators to join on as co-sponsors to kind of increase the support for the bill. If you have more co-sponsors, you're more likely to pass the bill eventually. Not a hard and fast rule, but a general rule. The bill is then introduced by the clerk or Senate secretary in New Jersey, and it's sent to a committee that deals with the topic area that's covered in the bill. There's public hearings. The bill is debated. There may be amendments proposed by other legislators to fix certain things about the bill. And if it passes committees, it'll go for a floor vote. It'll go for a second reading, and eventually a third floor reading as well. So it has 3 floor readings per chamber. So it's going to go through that whole process I described and then cross over into the other chamber, Senate or Assembly, and go through that same process again. And if it passes both, then it goes to the governor, who can either sign or veto it. In New Jersey, it's different in every state, the veto process, but if the governor vetoes it in New Jersey, they can ask for changes to the bill before they sign it. And the legislature can either say, yeah, that doesn't seem so bad, let's take up those changes, or they can override the veto and pass the bill in its original form with a 2/3 majority vote in both chambers. Let's go to the next one. That's the overview of how a bill becomes law. And then where can we have a voice? In terms of where we can have a voice, like I said, bill introduction, we can be the idea generators for a bill concept. We can also intervene when a committee hearing is scheduled and a bill that we care about is on the docket for being discussed. And before the committee hearing, we can speak with our legislators about the bill and talk to them and make sure they vote our way. When it's in committee, we can go and testify. There's a number of committees in New Jersey, from environment and energy to community and urban affairs, budget and appropriations. Made a list here, transportation. Our environmental bills often show up in many committees, right? They touch a lot of different areas. Health is another big one, public health. So in New Jersey, you can also submit online testimony, which I don't think I can do in my state, which is annoying. Sorry, but you can also go and testify, like I said, at the hearing. You can go to the committee room, and what you do is you go and Taylor can speak to this better, having done it, but you fill out a testimony slip, and then they put you in line to speak. And we can do another training about delivering effective testimony another time. But as the bill goes through the process, we will have continued touch points to intervene, to advocate. And something I want to emphasize too, from my experience here, is it's never one and done. If you want to have an impact on a bill, you have to build a relationship with the people in charge of the bill, the sponsors, or influencers of those sponsors, and then be a continuous presence. If you have an in-person meeting, then follow it up with a thank you, reiterate your ask. When the next committee hearing is up, you can, I'm not sure in New Jersey if you can subscribe to the bill. In some states you can, and you'll get alerts every time it gets called for a committee hearing. But just following the bill through the process, some people just don't realize that it's really a long haul process, and it takes multiple touch points throughout that process of making your ask and meeting with legislators and continuing to urge them to do what we want them to do. Like I said, as we talked about earlier, we have tools like phone banking, text banking, action alerts that can deliver emails to a legislator to get a large number of people, not physically in the building, but to pressure the legislator to support or oppose a bill. And working with your chapter staff in legislative committee is a way to amplify your lobby efforts happening in the building. The final place we can intervene, of course, is making sure the governor signs the bill or vetoes it, of course, if we don't like it. And what I've seen is that governors, even Democrats, don't always sign the bills that we supported. And you need to keep the pressure up through the end of the process. Like I said, I've kind of already talked about this, but it's more of a marathon than a sprint. At moments, it's going to feel like a sprint. You're going to be, hearing about a committee that happens the next day, and they only posted it the day before or 2 days before, and you have to sprint to get ready for that. But overall, I would say it's more of a long distance run. And then even beyond the legislative session, there's going to be implementation work with agencies in the state, the counties, the municipalities, to make sure that the bill that we passed is actually being implemented properly. And you're going to bring the same lobby skills that we're talking about here to those other venues. All right, I've talked a lot. I'm going to now hand it over to Taylor to walk you through, like I said before, a specific bill in New Jersey.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through a perfect example of something that the Sierra Club worked very hard, very long on, and that is to get the plastic bag ban, that's supposed to say bag, bill into law. So I'm gonna show you step by step how this happened, the sponsors involved, the committees involved. So this is just an overview of New Jersey and all of the districts. I'm gonna hone in on District 17 right here because that is the district of Senator Smith. And I don't know if you know Senator Smith, but he is an environmental champion and he has sponsored many, many environmental bills. And he just so happened to sponsor the plastic bag ban bill. So this snapshot actually is from the New Jersey Ledge website, and we can put, well, this is recorded. We'll give all the information in a follow-up email. But the New Jersey Legislature website is really useful to look up your legislators. You can look up, you'll see down below the committees he's chaired, where his education, but also the bills that he's passed. And that website also has a calendar of the committees up, and then other bills, all other bills. And Dan was mentioning you can sign up to receive email alerts for a specific bill that you're following. But in this case, we're going to be following the plastic bag ban bill. So Senator Smith is the sponsor of this bill, and then his running mates are Assemblyman Danielson and Assemblyman Egan. And so when we first introduced the bill, since it's an environmental bill, it goes to the Senate Environment Committee. And this is actually a real-time committee. On the top right corner, you can see our director, Angela Ramos, testifying. Senator Smith is the gentleman in the middle, and then you have Senator McKeon, Senator Zwicker, and a few other senators. And what happens is that you can testify. The bill it gets put on the agenda. Sometimes it's 2 days. Hopefully they'll give us 2 days, but we'll look on the agenda, the calendar on the NJ Ledge website. We'll see that the plastic bag ban bill is up and we go to testify for it. So we'll go into the committee room, we'll sign the slip with the bill number, and you can check if you want to testify or if you don't want to testify. You don't need to testify. You can still put in a slip of support without testifying, so you can do that as well. So this bill has to go through the Senate Environment Committee. And then on the Assembly side, it has to go through the Assembly Committee as well. And the Assembly Chairman is Senator Kennedy. So it has to go through those two committees. And then once it's released from those two committees, then it goes on the Senate chambers floor. So the entire Senate, all 40 members, have to vote on this one bill. And the same with the Assembly side. So all 80 members of the Assembly have to vote and pass this bill. This is why it really takes so long. And I did not mention that there's a Senate president. So once those two bills are released out of those specific committees, the Senate president is responsible for putting bills on the agenda for the full Senate floor. So he can say whether a bill goes or does not go on the floor. And our current Senate president is Senator Scutari. So he has the job of deciding which bills go on the Senate floor. So that's another main person that we need to influence to make sure that those bills go on the Senate floor for a full vote. On the Assembly side is the Majority Leader Coughlin, Assemblymember Coughlin, and he has the same role of putting the bills on the Assembly floor. So there's a lot of components to it, a lot of people to influence. But once the two components, the Assembly version and the Senate version, are both voted out of both chambers, then it goes to Senator Murphy to sign. And Dan did mention this before, he can sign it or he can conditionally veto it, which means that there's a few things that Governor Murphy wants changed, and he'll send that back to the proper committees for those changes. And then the Senate and Assembly have to vote again on the proper changes and back. And then there's obviously the absolute veto, which the Senate can override with the three-fourths majority vote. So that is basically how the plastic bag bill got signed into law, but I'm going to show you on the NJ Ledge website the actual, so if you type in, this is the website, you typed in the bill, it's S864. This is the Senate version. You can see, prohibits the provision or sale of single-use plastic carry-out bags. And you see the primary sponsors, so Senator Smith, Senator Greenstein, Senator Pinkin, Senator Kennedy, and Senator McKeon. And then the co-sponsors, a laundry list of co-sponsors as well. That's really important too. And I see a few familiar faces who joined us on People Over Plastics Lobby Day. It's important, you have your primary sponsor, Senator Smith, but it's also important to get co-sponsors as well, so that the Senate president and the majority leader can see, like, oh, hey, there's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of, either senators or assembly members that are supporting this bill. Must be important, and I'll put it on the agenda. So that's really, really helpful. And then when you scroll all the way down, you can see the timeline. So there have been so many different versions of this plastic bag bill. So it really did not take, it took several years to get this across. It was introduced and then it was changed. And then the session actually ended. So when that happens, you have to start all over again. So I think we did that 2 or 3 times. So in 2020, I think we got it right. It's introduced in the Senate environment, reported out, had a couple of amendments, went to Senate budget because I think it had a fiscal note to it. And then you'll see it passed full assembly, and then finally full passed both houses. And then what this means approved is that it was signed into law. And then you can find all of the original statement, like the original bill, and all of the reprints and changes. And this just goes to show you that sometimes you do need you need patience sometimes. The committee voting, you'll see, which legislators took a vote, if they voted yes, no, or abstained, which is helpful for just lobbying purposes or data purposes too. So I highly recommend you checking out this website. It's very resourceful. And I think I'm going to bring it over to Gabe.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. So next, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how your lobby visit is actually going to go. So we'll talk about the visit mechanics. So basically, what you can expect most of these meetings to last 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes 30. And I have seen a lobby meeting go as far as an hour, but that's in a very rare case. And it's really up to the legislator or their staff, which if you're lucky, you'll get a meeting with the legislator themselves, but more likely than not, you're gonna end up meeting with one of their staff members, which is perfectly okay because they'll be taking notes and they'll report back to the legislator the outcomes of your meeting. So basically in the meeting, you're gonna do introductions, you're gonna want to share stories, and then you're gonna want to answer any questions that the legislator might have. And then you're going to want to make the ask of whether you want them to support or oppose a particular bill. And then you'll thank the legislator for the meeting, and then you'll follow up with them through email with any information that you promised to give them. So the first step is you're going to make the appointment. So with this one, you want to be polite but persistent. You might not hear back from them at first. You might keep getting their voicemail, but you want to just keep calling them. And when you do try to set the appointment, you want to make sure to point out that you're a constituent. And it's really helpful if you're able to find the number of Sierra Club members and supporters that is represented in their district. So you can work with your chapter staff, and they can work with me, and we can find that data for you when you're trying to make the appointment. Then you want to prepare for your visit. So you're going to want to set up a rendezvous with your team. And at this point, I want to point out that a lobby meeting is an opportunity for you to flex your strength a little bit. So it's an opportunity for you not only to bring in a lot of people and increase the influence that your meeting has on that legislator, but it's also a great development opportunity for your volunteers. So particularly if you have any newer volunteers, this is a great opportunity to give them a role and get them some experience with lobbying. And a lot of people tend to enjoy the experience of a lobby meeting, and so it's more likely to keep them around for the long run. So um, try to invite, try to use it as an opportunity to bring along with you your people. Um, when you're meeting to prepare for the meeting, some of the roles you're going to want to assign to people include a facilitator. So basically somebody to just make sure that we're going along the agenda. A timekeeper, somebody to make sure that we're getting through all of the agenda items in time within the 15 to 20 minutes you'll probably have. It's good to have a note taker, somebody to keep track of particularly any questions that the legislator has that you want to follow up on with any particular answers. And then you're going to want 2 to 3 people to share a personal story of how the issue affects them, and then somebody to make the hard ask. And of course, depending on the number of people you have, you can have somebody double up on these roles. Also, part of preparing for the visit is you're going to want to study the bills, and I would recommend especially making sure that you're familiar with the arguments not only for the bill if you're supporting the bill, but also the arguments against the bill. Arguments that you think are likely to come up in the lobby meeting from the legislator that the legislator might have heard before, and this gives you an opportunity to correct them, to educate the legislator on the reality of the bill and get rid of any disinformation that they might have heard. Like Taylor pointed out before, it's good to know the chief sponsor and any other co-sponsors from the same party that are signed on to the bill. So you definitely want to make sure if the person you're lobbying, if they are already signed on or not. Then you're going to want to write up just about 3 main talking points that you're going to want to use during the lobby meeting. And then before the meeting, you want to email an agenda with the specific bills, the topics, and contact information before your visit so they can know to prepare for the topics that you're going to be bringing up. This leads to a more productive discussion usually. And then some tips for when you're in the meeting itself to have a successful meeting is dress nicely, be on time, be prepared. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, but we'll get back to you. That's a great answer, and you don't want to guess usually. You don't want to guess. Then you want to press for a commitment in a positive way. Now, when you're making the ask is going to depend on where that legislator currently stands on the issue. So they can range anywhere. There's 5 positions essentially that a legislator can take. They can be in active opposition to a particular bill, which means that they're going out and they're publicly speaking against it. They're talking to their colleagues in the Senate or the Assembly, making sure that they vote against that bill. Or they could be in passive opposition to the bill, which means they're not as actively opposing it, but you're expecting that they're probably going to vote no on it. Then they can be neutral, or they can be passive supporter or an active supporter, or what we often refer to as champions of the bill. So these are the passive and the active supporters are your co-sponsors, and then your active supporters are the ones that are going out there in the press. They're willing to talk at events that you have in support of the bill, and they're talking to their colleagues on committees or within the Assembly and the Senate to try to get more support for that particular bill. When you're in the meeting, you also want to try to look for common ground, ways that you can relate to the legislator. This helps to not only build the relationship, but make them a little more likely to hear you out in what you're trying to say. Finally, the last step, after the meeting, you're going to want to thank them for their time. And then you're going to want to follow up the meeting with an email thanking them again for the meeting and including any extra information that the legislator might have asked for that you maybe didn't have an answer for during the meeting. You also want to, it's a great idea to take a picture and that you can post to social media with a quick note saying something like, I had a great meeting with my representative about X, Y, or Z. And then you want to report out on how the meeting went to any other people who might be interested, any other the rest of the committee or other volunteers. And I think we're ready to go to the next slide. Thank you. So, like Dan pointed out before, it's really important that you're trying to establish a good relationship with the legislator that you're meeting with. Now, this will, of course, depend on your past experiences, recent battles that you might have fought where they might have been on the same side as you or not. But you're gonna want to first start off by thanking the legislator for the meeting and then giving a 1 to 2 minute summary of who you are. So this includes like where you live, how long you've lived there, the size and the nature of your family, and a couple of things that you really care about. And then you're going to want to state the topic of the meeting. And then in the next slide, or in the next following slides, I'm going to go over how you might be able to influence your legislator when you're in the meeting. But first, yeah, go to one more slide. Taylor, please. There you go, that one. No, back one. There you go. Thank you. No, sorry, forward one. The one with the can I influence the legislator. There we go. So I wanted to ask people real quick. Have you ever been influenced by somebody? Let's say you had a particular stance on an issue and then you talked to somebody and they had an impact on the way you thought about it. You can feel free to put it in the chat or to come off mute and share a time that you were won over by an argument or that you were influenced to support or oppose a particular issue. Okay, seeing none, we can, yeah, this is the right slide. So when you're trying to appeal to your legislator and influence them to make to support your bill, there's three things that we like to keep in mind. One is you want to appeal to their heart. So this is like emotions. If you know argument rhetoric and argumentation, this would be like the pathos, right? The things that that appeal to their emotions, their sense of justice, things like that. You want to also appeal to their head. So these are things, this would be like the logos. This would be the facts, the data, the any kind of statistics that you might have, the history of the particular piece of legislation. And then you want to appeal to their hand. So you want to find out, you want to ask them for their support and work with them to figure out what are things that they can do to support or oppose that particular bill that you're talking about. And the best way to really influence somebody is by sharing a story. As human beings, throughout our history, this is one of the primary ways that we've communicated and related to each other, and organized ourselves is through telling stories with each other. So stories can be very powerful. First, some tips on telling a story. You want to be vulnerable. This can take a little bit of practice, especially when you're in a group with other people, with the legislator, a stranger, but it really goes a long way in making your story more impactful. And then you want to introduce yourself and your background. It's usually a good idea to start with your values. So saying something like, I believe X, Y, and Z. So for example, with an environment, we might say, I believe that everybody deserves an opportunity to explore, enjoy, and protect our planet. Then you want to outline an issue that you had related to your topic. So this is the question of why do you care? So how has this issue impacted you or somebody that you love in the past? Now you want to make it visceral. You want to use imagery. I really can't stress enough how far imagery can go for a story. So invoke all of the senses. When you're writing up your story, think about what it felt like, what it looked like, what it smelled like, what it tasted like, anything like that. And you want to make it relatable. You want to also go deep on the impact that it had or has on you. And then finally, you want to tie it back to the legislation and how this particular piece of legislation could have prevented the issue or could fix the issue. It's also good to weave in there the talking points that you came up with when you were meeting with your team before. And then finally end with a plea for them to either support or oppose that particular bill. Next slide, please. Finally, just to kind of recap, basically, you're going to want to, at the end of the meeting, you're going to want to thank the legislator for the meeting. Sorry, at the beginning of the meeting, you want to thank them. And at the end, you're going to want to give a 1 to 2 minute story of you, state the topic of the meeting, appeal to their heart, their head, and their hands, thank them again, and then ensure that that you're going to be in touch with them in the future. Just a couple more tips. Don't try not to be nervous. Keep in mind that these legislators are not, deities. They're not gods or anything like that. They're as human as you and I, and their job is to listen to you and represent you, not the other way around. So really, as the constituents, you're the ones with the power in the room. So don't forget that. You want to bring any related materials that you have, talking points, fact sheets, any kind of handouts that might be helpful to help educate the legislator on your issue. Really important, and I've come across this one before. You want to stay on topic, and by that I mean don't let them steal the focus. I've been in multiple lobby meetings where the legislator, it was usually the same legislator who kept doing this, but they might try asking you if you'll support another bill that they're working on. So some legislators might have pet bills that they're really excited about, and they're doing everything they can to pass it. And they'll try to maybe garner your support for that bill. But just make it clear that, we're not here to talk about that bill. We're here to talk about this bill that we came here to talk about. So let's try to stay on topic with that. And this is where the facilitator would usually come in to do that. And that covers it for my piece. I think I'll pass it back to Dan.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was really great. So in past lobby trainings, those of you who've been to the ones that I've helped run, they usually tell the story of getting a dog, but today we're going to do it a little bit differently and think about it differently. We will take maybe 5 minutes here to take some, focus practice time. Let's imagine there's a bill in the legislature that addresses an issue that you care about. Maybe it's plastics. Maybe it's protecting a wild space that you're, passionate about. And imagine there's a bill that addresses that issue. Let's try and go through and write down what you would say to a legislator to lobby them to support that bill. So thinking back to what Gabriel talked about with the appeal, first introducing yourself, and Gabriel said a 1 to 2 minute story of you. I would say 1 minute if you can, because some of these meetings are really short. And if you're in the hallway, which a lot of your meetings are going to be, it's more like 1 to 2 sentences versus 1 to 2 minutes for sure, because you're just rushing. So introduce yourself, do your quick story of you, and then do your heart, head, hand. So what story are you going to bring to it? I really like what Gabriel talked about with appealing to the different senses. What did that talking about it from that multi-dimensional perspective, and then bringing it back to the bill and picking a couple of facts. If you don't know the facts, that's totally fine. I mean, you can Google them now if you want, but you could also just think of like what facts you would later look up to bring into your meeting. And then what would your ask be? Which would be pretty simple, would be to support the bill, but think of how you would say it. And we thought about doing breakout rooms or anything like that, but I think we're just going to stay here as one group. So let's take like 5 minutes max and think about doing a practice meeting. Does anyone have any questions about the exercise? All right.
I have
So-
a bunch of questions. They're not about the exercise.
Oh,
But-
we'll have time for Q&A
Okay.
like after this last thing too. Yeah. Great. So let's take a few minutes and then we'll come back at, let's say 7:52.
I also want to give a big shout out to Judith, who is actually in this picture and with us right now. This is from our People Over Plastics Lobby Day. She did a terrific job along with Bob.
All right, it is 7:53. so we can come back as a group. And like I said, we will have a chance for Q&A for a few minutes, or if you want to stay on longer past 8, I'm happy to stay on and field questions to the best of my ability. Would anyone like to share their pitch that they wrote?
I guess I can.
Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, it's partially true and partially made up, but that's only for you to know. So, our building electrification committee for the Sierra Club has really been looking at the building decarbonization bill. And that's a bill that helps you design buildings to make them energy efficient and fossil fuel free. And why do I care about this? I remember my grandmother's house. She was born in 1897, and her house was heated by coal with a coal furnace in the basement. And the house was always full of soot, and it was drafty and cold. So in the intervening time, we've come a long way, but we still have invisible particles in our home. We still have particulates that cause children with asthma, and our homes are still leaky and waste heat. We've just cranked up the thermostat a little bit more and to make it seem comfortable. But we can fix this. We can make by passing the building decarbonization rules, we can make a house that's sealed tightly, doesn't waste energy, and is clean inside with electric heat. Would you support that bill? Okay.
I definitely would. Thank you, Betsy. That was awesome. I love the story of your grandmother and appealing to the senses and the soot, and that's great. That's really good. Great job. Thank you. Anyone else want to share their story, or?
I can share what I said as a public comment at the Senate Environmental Committee back in January. Would that be of use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
I am a concerned citizen from Skillman, New Jersey, in support of S 3398 to help address our plastic waste crisis. I'm at the limit of what I can do as an individual to eliminate unnecessary and single-use plastic. We need a strong policy to ensure that producers and users of plastic are limiting its harmful impacts. I'm especially concerned about the negative impacts on human health throughout the entire life cycle of plastic. So much so that I'm pushing past my fear of public speaking to come here to the State House today for the first time ever to make a comment. So thank you for being here to listen. Just one more thing that I want to share. With support from my environmental commission in Montgomery Township, I hosted a screening of a film that's called We're All Plastic People Now. It presents the small but growing research about the impacts on our health, the scale and scope from the chemicals in certain plastics. I was hoping for about 15 or 20 people. It was a cold December night before the holidays when everyone was busy, and there were nearly 50 people there. To me, it says that people in my community are concerned about this, they're paying attention, and they want to take some action.
Very well done. Thank you very much, Kathy. I can really feel your passion for the issue and want to support your bill.
Kathy, I had the pleasure of actually listening to that in person, so that was great. I was right behind you.
But I chickened out on lobby day. What the plastics
It's
lobby
totally
day?
fine. There are plenty of opportunities. I'll let everybody know.
Well, I want to make sure we have time for open questions as well. If you want to put your story in the chat, if you didn't get a chance, that would be great too. Kathy, you had some questions to lead us off?
Well, actually, yeah, that's a good segue because I honestly, I got up, I got dressed, I drove to Trenton on the plastics lobby day. There was the traffic jam at the parking garage, it was filled. I went around all the streets and they were all just 2-hour parking, and I ended up driving home. It was a very terrible feeling. And I know you guys were doing some training. So this is all very, intellectual. This all makes sense. But I need help with getting from like what's here on this screen, the words, and actually doing it. I understand that in New Jersey, in Trenton, our legislators don't have offices, unlike other places where you go and you meet, that you kind of gotta run alongside them in the hallways as they go from point A to B. And honestly, that whole prospect just made me, I'm an introvert. So, that put me off, even though, yeah, I feel very strongly and I know this is the most important step. I can sign all the petitions I want. I can pick up all the litter I want. The only thing that will make a permanent, long-standing change is legislation. So help me out here.
Yeah, I can take that, Dana.
Go for it. Yeah.
So Kathy, this is actually a picture from our People Over Plastics Lobby Day. We did have scheduled meetings, and I'm the same way. I'm an introvert. I don't want to bother people. So for Sierra Club, since this was a coalition event with several other organizations, some other organizations lobby differently. Some organizations just will be in the lobby, hence lobby day. But we do like to have scheduled meetings, and this slide you can see that we're going to be having on Thursday a lobby day, pushing for 100% clean energy. And we actually reserved a committee room, and legislators are going to come and meet with us. So yeah, that's the Sierra Club. We want to have, and we know that people are coming from all over the state, and we want to make sure that you're having a meaningful experience. So we tried to do that. We had, I think, 3 or 4 scheduled meetings with legislators, and I think we have some scheduled meetings on Thursday as well, in case you're interested.
Thanks. Well, and
Mhm.
just
Right.
an add-on, I don't want to, I know I'm done, but you talked about and I'm with Beyond Plastics, so I'm aware of those wonderful efforts. You talked about getting co-sponsors. What is the requirement for someone to be a co-sponsor? What is the ask there? How much of a commitment is that from a
It's
legislator?
It's not as a big of a commitment as a prime sponsor. A co-sponsor is someone who's supportive of it. And so in this meeting specifically, this is Megan from Clean Ocean Action, also with Judith in the back. Shout out with Assemblywoman Hayter. And we asked her if she wanted to be a co-sponsor to the bill. And so that's just a next step towards just being supportive. Obviously, that's almost like an affirmative action that she's going to vote yes when it comes up in committee, if she's on the committee, or for the full assembly. And for this meeting, they can do it electronically. When I used to be a legislative aide, we would carry the slips that basically had, like, co-sponsor, yes, have their signature, and you would submit it to the majority office. But in this case, she agreed to be co-sponsor, and her aide would submit that electronically. The prime sponsor, Senator Smith, is really the one who deals with obviously drafting the bill and meeting with stakeholders. He not only meets with, environmental organizations, specifically with the plastic bill, pushing to reduce plastics. He meets with the plastic industry too, because they're like, what the heck's going on? So he tries to kind of balance things out, and he's responsible for taking all of those inquiries. So the prime sponsor has the biggest job, and he's the person to really push it forward into the legislature. Like, he's on the Environment Committee, but he needs to be contacting Senator Scutari to get it on the agenda. If it has a fiscal note, which means if there's some type of money involved, then it has to go to a budget committee. And the budget chair is for the Senate is Senator Sarlo, who's not the easiest to work with, but that Senator Smith has right now 14 pending bills that need to get heard in the budget. So Senator Smith, as a prime sponsor, has a big job to do when it comes to getting that bill onto Governor Murphy's desk to sign. A co-sponsor is someone who's very supportive of it, publicly supportive of it, because you can see on the NJLEDGE website that is all public. So, her constituents, Assemblywoman Hayter's constituents will know industry will know. It's just a next big step for an assembly or a senator to be a co-sponsor, and a huge step to be a prime sponsor. That's a long answer to your question. Hopefully I answered it.
Thank you.
I want to also just give a really brief response to the first part around being a little introverted and not liking public speaking, etc. Super simple answer for me is just it's kind of like riding a bike, right? You just got to get out there and try it, and you might feel not great about your first few times and be like, oh, why did I say this or that? But the important part is that you are getting in the building and they're hearing from you. So that's just what I would say about that. I hope that's helpful. Any other questions? All right, well, we're past the hour. Thank you all for being here. And
Dan, I do just
Taylor, do you have any closing words? Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. I do just want to mention, and I'm losing, I forget where are you? Okay, there you are. I did mention that we have 100% Clean Energy Lobby Day. Betsy, I know if you had signed up for it, there will be a fact sheet. Angeli is heading this, so you'll have more information in the next few days. I think Betsy, you are on mute. That's you on mute.
I've asked repeatedly for information about the bill, and I didn't sign up because I got no information about what the bill said.
Okay, we'll let her know ASAP. The other thing too is, Dan did mention that we do have a legislative committee. So if you're interested in, joining the legislative committee, I'll send a follow-up email to everybody who RSVP to this, with information about that, and just let me know if you're interested. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good
Thank you
night.
guys so much.
Thanks, y'all. Bye-bye.
Take care.